of this can lead us to confusion, doubt, and despair, even depression. So our first mistake in the beginning is to fall into isolation and see ourselves as all alone. Woe is me. Why did this have to happen to me? I mean, everything was going good. Now look. And here's what I want to impress you from the very beginning. Isolation is the worst thing we can do, especially if we isolate ourselves from God. And we have this idea of God that, why did you allow this, God? I mean, you can control everything. So you're really responsible for what I'm going through. We may not say it, but we tend to think it. And this is a conception of God that is so far away from the Bible. We think God is this perfect being, who's just kind of immune to everything up there. But it couldn't be further from the truth. Our God is right in the middle of problems. There's no one that's had more problems than God himself. Let me just give you an idea of this. Stay with me here. Think about it. God created this universe. He created it to be good. And he made some people that he wanted to fellowship with. He wanted to pour out the love that's in himself, Father, Son, and Spirit, in the Godhead. He wanted to pour out that love to people. And so he made these people in his own image, capable of receiving his love and giving his love back. Well, I don't know how far along we got into this scenario, but things all went awry for God. Those very people that he created for love decided to do the one thing that they were forbidden to do in that whole beautiful garden. They didn't even have to work. They had everything provided for them, and all they had to do was love God and love each other and enjoy the creation. Just that one little tree, that's all they had to stay away from. But what did they do? They go to that tree and they eat just exactly. And God had said that's the one thing they shouldn't do. Then they felt shame for their sin. Now, everything then kind of collapsed with God's plan, his original plan. He had to shut down the garden, kick them out. He kept loving them, but he couldn't love them in the way he wanted to because they had lost the life and capacity for godlikeness. They had lost. God said they would surely die. They didn't collapse and fall on the ground dead, but they lost the life of their spirit with God. It's called Zoe life. In the New Testament, that word, the Greek word Zoe, is the life that Jesus restores to us. But it was lost way back in the garden. So, it's the difference between life and existence. There are a lot of people out there breathing the air and existing, right? But they don't know anything about this life that you and I experience in Jesus. Because that Zoe life has now been restored by the Son of God. It's life that goes right on into eternity. But most people are out there just existing because they don't know God. They're walking, they're their own God. So God had to enter into a whole salvation plan for history that would take centuries and centuries to fulfill. So we can already see how God kind of blew it, didn't he? But that wasn't the first time he blew it, because before he made human beings, he had some angels that he had created. The number one angel and the leader of his worship in the heavens was Lucifer. What happened with Lucifer? Lucifer started thinking he was so great, he might as well rival God and be God himself. And God knew that wouldn't work. So he said, you're going down there. And he cast Lucifer Lucifer down to the earth. But what did Lucifer do? He was so persuasive, he talked 1/3 of the angels into going with him. And they all got thrown down to the earth. Now God had already, in a sense, blown it, hadn't he? With the angels. He lost 1/3 of his angels and his top one, number one angel. And now that angel became his everlasting enemy, at least until the lake of fire. So what I'm saying is God is quite familiar with problems. We could march right on through history, and I'm just going to do that as briefly as I can. But what happened just a few decades into Adam and Eve's history? Well, we start with their sons. One of them killed the other one. What happened? God created this great universe. And your first two people rebel against you, and one of their sons kills the other one.
There's a pretty girl behind you.
Okay. All right. Can you hear me?
Oh, thank God. Okay. So much.
Things got worse on the earth. Aho did it. These angelic beings began to cohabit with women and create these monster-type people called Nephilims. God said, the heart of humanity was only evil continuously. God said, that's enough. One family he found, Noah, who was after his own heart. And he saved the people on that ark and the creatures, but otherwise he wiped out all living things. You know, it was kind of plan B. Plan A didn't work. Here came plan B. You think God knows anything about problems? Yeah. It kept going. The children of Israel, whom he had called out through Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, ended up in bondage in Egypt. And he sent Moses to send them out through great miracles. What did they do? They grumped, complained all through the wilderness. When they got to the land that God had made for them and promised them, what did they do? No, we're not going in there. There are giants in there. Okay, don't go in there. Go back to the wilderness until you die. Your kids will go in there. Another failure. Yeah, God knows. He doesn't mind me saying it. God's ultimate and first plan failed. And then his continuous plans had failure mixed in. And he wants us to know that so that we won't feel so isolated in our failures. Are you hearing me? This set me free. I want it to set you free. The Holy Spirit is here speaking to us. We're going to have a whole new approach to problems when we walk out here. And that changes your life. Because the one thing we hate is to wade through these problems and battle them all the time. Try to get out of every problem and wiggle out of it any